And good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Video Sports Page. I'm your host, Carl Pratt, along with Rich Goulart and Matt Willett. Glad you're along for our program, where the emphasis is on local sports. Tonight, we welcome you to edition number 1132. Over the next half hour, you'll have an opportunity to meet one of the newest members of the Boston Celtics. We'll check in on one of the more successful field hockey programs down at Plymouth South High School. We'll spend some time with Dave DeRocha, who coaches youth football in the town of Plymouth. And we'll also spend some time with Constantine Regas. He coaches a Jaguar Mite program that's having a lot of success. And speaking of a lot of success, we're going to talk about some area high school teams that are having banner falls here in 2012. But right off the top, let's call on Rich behind the scenes. We're going to push some buttons. We're going to replay an interview with Courtney Lee. He's a fellow the Celtics picked up recently. I spent some time with Courtney at the Celtics Media Day recently. Okay, let's continue with this week's edition of the Video Sports Page. I'm pleased to spend some time with Courtney Lee, one of the newest members of the Boston Celtics. Does Media Day get old for you?
No, it's new every time. I mean, I enjoy it. This is my first time here in Boston, first media day, so I get a chance to familiarize all the faces and get to know you guys.
Let's talk, if we can, a little bit about being in the NBA and how good it's been to you.
Being in the NBA has always been good to me. It was a dream that I had growing up as a kid, and I'm living that dream right now, so I enjoy it. It's very humbling, and I look forward to continue to spend more years in the NBA.
What about the idea when teams are in hot pursuit of you and you know maybe one team doesn't want you anymore, but on the flip side, some team does?
Yeah, I mean, that's the benefit of it. You always have teams out there that's going to have interest in you, especially if you did what you're supposed to do as a player and put down a demo for what teams would need and want. And it feels good to have teams come after you.
Talk about when you were a youngster and you first made it into the NBA. Who was that first bigger-than-life figure, if you know what I mean? You used to see highlights on ESPN or the game of the week, and all of a sudden you stepped on a particular court and you said, wow, I'm on the same court with so-and-so.
The first one was my teammate, Dwight Howard. I mean, you see plays and commercials with him everywhere. Then getting drafted to Orlando and then playing with him, that was the first one. And then the first preseason game we had was against Miami, and I had to guard Dwayne Wade first game. And so that was my first moment right there.
How about when you look around now and you see the NBA video games, okay? Even if you don't play them, maybe your cousins do or your nephews, and you see you're part of it, and it's kind of cool stuff, isn't it?
Yeah, it's definitely cool to see yourself on a video game and see people playing with you. And then you getting tweets saying I just dropped like 30 points with Courtney Lee on NBA 2K. I mean, that's definitely fun to see, and it's definitely fun to play on the games with myself also.
Talk, if we can, when you made it into the pros. What was it like when you went back to your hometown? I mean, how many people said, oh, remember I beat you one-on-one. Oh, remember I told you were going to make it. And so everybody jumps on the bandwagon once you're there.
Oh, yeah, you definitely have a lot of those stories, but the ones that mean the most are the people that really helped you get there, like family and close friends. Just going back and just seeing the joy and the happiness on all their face means the most.
Let me just ask you, at what point in your life did you think you said, I think I got a shot to be a pro basketball player? I mean, in high school it might have been a dream. First year in college you might say, geez, I hope so. But was there a defining moment where you said, you know what, I think I can do this?
It had to be after my sophomore year in college. My name started appearing on a lot of draft boards, and my coaches and all the guys around on the staff was getting phone calls from NBA teams, and they was asking questions about me. And so right there it turned into reality, and I knew that I had to put in even more work to get to the level that I wanted to get at. So I would say after my sophomore year of college.
All right, so for people that don't get a chance to talk to you like I do and they don't know you, they're going to just see you on the Jumbotron or jump crazy when you hit a three or steal a ball. You know what I'm saying. What would you like people to know about you?
That I'm a very humble guy. I mean, if you see me out and about either grocery shopping or anything, don't be shy to come up and talk to me, because I love interacting with fans, and so we can carry a conversation all day. You don't have to worry about an arrogant guy blowing you off at all.
Well, it certainly worked for us. We appreciate it. We're looking forward to covering your game.
All right, thank you.
You bet. Courtney Lee joining us this week on the Video Sports Page. All right, as we continue with this week's edition of our program, we want to remind you we've got a few more Celtic interviews, some more personalities to share with you in some of our programs down the road. Well, speaking of programs, how about the Plymouth South Field Hockey program? They've sputtered a bit of late, just the last couple of games, but they're certainly enjoying a very fine season. Let's call on our guys to show you some videotape, and as we watch these young ladies in action, I can give you an update and tell you that the Plymouth South girls are involved in action against Dennis Yarmouth. And when we talk about the Plymouth South girls program, they're already tied with the all-time total for victories, which is only 6, but certainly there's plenty of field hockey yet to be played this year. Plymouth South going up against Dennis Yarmouth, and unfortunately they lose this game here where we have the highlights, and they also lost earlier this week 3-2 to Marshfield. But they've also surpassed the school's record for most goals in one season, and now they have just 4 games left on the schedule, and they need to win 3 of those. Actually, there's 6 games left on the schedule, and they need to win 3 of those games in order to qualify for postseason play. And part of those 6 games, they're facing 3 teams they already defeated this season. Next on tap for Plymouth South, they'll take on Bridgewater Raynham on Friday. Let's get some of the natural sound from action from Wednesday. All right, the Plymouth South Lady Panthers in action against Dennis Yarmouth. As I mentioned, a postseason berth right around the corner if they can pick up and enjoy some of the same success they had earlier in the schedule. Well, speaking of success, how about the Duxbury field hockey program? An impressive victory this week against Marshfield, 8-0. All right, here's their record, a perfect 12-0 so far this fall. Well, you want to talk about success? How about head coach Mike Perroni's girls varsity soccer team out in Carver? On Wednesday, they played in a torrential downpour in Cohasset, and it was actually Carver 1, Cohasset 1. The only goal for the Carver Crusaders came from Sammy McGrath. It was her 8th of the season. She's tied for the team lead with Kerry Alexander. All right, so far this season, how about this record for Carver? 8 wins, 1 loss, and 3 ties. Now, Coach Perroni expected to have success, but he admits he didn't expect to have just 1 loss after 12 tries this fall. Along with Kerry Alexander and Sammy McGrath, Ari Seaver is doing a great job as the team's goalie. She's only a sophomore, and she's come up very, very big. And looking back to that action on Wednesday, Carver had 4 breakaways, and they were stymied by a young goalie from Cohasset in that 1-1 draw. On Friday, Carver will be back in action. They'll be home against Mashpee. Now, here's a couple of notes about this Carver soccer team so far this fall. Okay, first time in 5 years they've defeated East Bridgewater. They did that to start the season. Their only loss on the season so far came in a rematch against East Bridgewater. And on the first time, or I should say for the first time in 5 years, Carver had a tie against Norwell. But according to Coach Peroni, these kids are really blossoming, really maturing as young soccer players, especially the freshmen. He knew he had some talent. He had his top 3 goal scorers coming back this year, but he didn't know where these youngsters would fit in and if they'd be able to stand the game physically and mentally. And so far, these young freshmen have withstood every challenge for Carver, and that's meant the difference in wins and losses, 8-1-3 as they go up against Mashpee tomorrow. Well, you know what? When you start your football careers, you begin in a Mighty Mite program, and then the sky's the limit after that. Well, for one Plymouth man, Dave DeRocha, he has an opportunity to come back to Plymouth and give back to the program where he started several years ago. I had an opportunity to spend some time with this Plymouth Vikings Mighty Mite coach. Okay, let's continue with this week's edition of the Video Sports page. Oftentimes on this program, we have a Meet the Athlete segment. This time around, we're going to have a Meet the Coach segment and former athlete, if we want to add it that way. I'm pleased to be joined this week on the program by Dave DeRocha. He coaches in the Plymouth Vikings Pop Warner program, a former football player with Plymouth North High School, and we appreciate your time, and you must be having a lot of fun coaching the youngsters.
Oh, I live for it. I have more fun than they do. I tell them every year when we start the season, no matter how much fun you have, I'm going to have more than you.
Let's talk. What is it, though? What is it makes it fun for you? Obviously, it's the smiles when the kids score their first touchdown, catch their first pass, make their first tackle.
It's more when it clicks. Football is not a natural instinct for a lot of kids. You know, running, smashing into people. We always tell kids growing up, you know, from an early age, don't be rough. Stop hitting him. So when the kids start to learn these skills and you see the light go on where they lose that fear of contact, or they learn how to come off the ball the way that you're trying to coach them, that's what gives me the most satisfaction.
Talk about it if you can. I know every kid is different. They all mature at a different level and a different rate. But how about for these youngsters? You're dealing with such a delicate age when it finally does click. Does it take a couple of practices? Does it take 2 months? Does it take 3 games?
Every kid is different. Some kids inherently are aggressive. Other kids, it takes a little bit longer. You know, my son, fourth year playing football at 9 years old, so he's been playing for half his life now. It took him a full season. His first year, he was, you know, that kid that shied away from contact a little bit. Towards the end of the year, you started seeing him getting a little closer to the piles, to the action. And then his second year, he just really took to it.
All right, how many plays can you put in at the Mighty Mite level? Realistically, you go out there with the kids and you say, we run left, we run right, we run up the middle?
You would be surprised and amazed at how many plays these guys can run. We run 3 different formations. We're actually going to put in a 4th formation. We have a wristband play, a wristband that our quarterback wears that has 40 plays on it, and I call the plays by number, but there are at least another 40 that are on my sheet that I can call if I want to. They amaze me with what they're able to do.
All right, as you can tell from my graphic, this week on the program, I'm pleased to be joined by Dave DeRocha. Once played in the Plymouth High School football program, now coaching and giving back into the community. How important is it for a guy like you to give back?
It's like I said, it's for me. I get the joy out of teaching the game to the young guys and then seeing them grow. You know, you see a kid small, shy, shows up for practice the first week, maybe doesn't talk to many kids. You know, and there's one in my mind right now. He's the life of the team. We do drills. The whole team's chanting his name, and you can see the kid come out of his shell and start to gain confidence by being part of a team and learning the game of football.
So it's just as important to build the X's and O's as it is character.
Absolutely. I think football teaches, you know, as many life lessons as there is out there. You know, these guys, I tell them, you're gonna get knocked down. No one is gonna reach down and help you get back up. You got to get up on your own, and you know, you got to constantly compete. You got to strive to get better. And these, like I said, they amaze me at what these 7, 8, and 9-year-olds do on a daily basis.
Sure. All right. I can remember way back when doing the Cap Sports Games of the Week, covering David and playing for the Blue Eagle program. But I also remember your dad at every single game. He was one of the earliest parents that showed up. He stayed back, minded his own business, but you could tell his eyes lit up when you did things good. How important was it to have his support?
it's amazing. And the funny thing is he's still there for my son. Every practice, well, not practice so much, but games. Every game, you see the DeRocha entourage sitting off to the side. My son and I were actually talking about it last night. How lucky he is to have the support of his aunts, his uncles, his grandparents at every game they can make. They're there, and it makes a big difference, to know that they're always there. My grandparents, they made it to all my games. I remember that, and I cherish that they were there to share that. But I do tell my son all the time, I have more fun watching him succeed than I ever did myself. And it's hard for him to understand that, but it's true.
Someday he will. All right, let's back up the clock, because you played for many years with the Plymouth High School program. You went on to Assumption College. You had a stint with Mass Maritime. What are those numbers? You played Pop Warner football. I mean, how many years did that body get beat up?
I played total 14 seasons of football. And I am starting to feel a little bit of it now. Sometimes it's a little slow getting up now and then, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. I actually tried to get back in shape when I was 30 to try to make a run at maybe the Outlaws, and ended up rupturing my Achilles tendon. And then I decided I'm no longer an athlete. I'm just a golfer and a coach.
There you go. But obviously a good golfer, and I don't know about that, a good coach, put it that way, giving back to the community. Before I let you sneak away, what are some of those fondest memories of you growing up playing high school football? You got banged up, as I remember. You came back playing a little quarterback. You were a running back. You weren't the easiest guy to bring down.
Boy, hard to pinpoint a moment. I think, you build. I have great memories from youth football. I had some great coaches. Football system was a little different back then. Fewer teams, I think fewer kids involved. It amazes me how many kids are involved in the program now. We have about 7-8 teams in the Viking side. I know Jaguars have about 6 teams. It's amazing how many kids are playing. High school, we had some tough seasons while I was in high school, a couple of low win total seasons, but it was always the camaraderie, being with your teammates, working to get better. In college, I've been on some teams that have struggled a little bit, but it's always, putting in the work, going out, competing. I think that's something us old athletes never lose, is that will to compete.
Sure.
We like to compete no matter what it is.
Yeah, but how about the positive effect that you have now, and the positive approach and the big smile and the energy that I feel? You didn't have all that success, but obviously you had such a strong love for the game, and you're giving back. I mean, I would think with those low win totals, you'd say after a while, hey, forget about this. Throw the shoulder pads in the closet and say, I'm done.
No, I think even back then, and especially now that I'm, in charge of molding these kids into football players and good people, it was not so much about the wins and losses. It was about the game, and like I said, about the will to compete. And it was the most fun I ever had, was playing football. And it's probably not the best thing, but I tell my son all the time, we practice so that we can play football. Nobody really likes to practice football.
Right.
It's a tough sport. In practice, you beat up each other a little bit. But when you get to play, that's the payoff.
Well, the payoff for us is revisiting with former athletes that we cover, and we don't get to know them that much up close and personal. We just know them by a number when you call a game, but eventually you meet gentlemen like Dave joining us on the program. You're giving back to the community. I know the people appreciate it, and I'm sure your son's going to cherish those memories like you did of your dad and your grandparents, but we appreciate your time.
Thank you very much, Carl.
You bet. Dave DeRocha joining us this week on the Video Sports page, and his Mighty Mite program will be back in action once again this weekend. They're already on the backside of the 2012 schedule. We'll continue. All right, as we continue along with our program, let's talk about some area high school teams that are enjoying some great success. How about the Pembroke volleyball team? A 3-1 victory over Plymouth South this week and a 3-0 victory over Whitman-Hanson. It was their 10th win of the season when they defeated Whitman-Hanson. Pembroke is now qualified for the postseason. The Sacred Heart volleyball team is now a perfect 9-0. Following a 3-0 victory against Southeastern, winning by scores 25-16, 25-16, and 25-9. The Duxbury Golf program defeated Whitman-Hanson this week. Their record is now 13-2 overall, 11-1 in the Patriot League. Nick Drago led the way as he shot an even par. 34. And the Pembroke golf team came up with a victory against Quincy, 42-24. The Pembroke Titans golf team is now 11-4 on the season. And let's talk about some high school soccer. Silver Lake defeated Whitman Hanson 4-0 this week. The Silver Lake boys are 7-3-1 overall, 7-1 in the very tough Patriot League, and they're currently on top of the Keenan division, tied for first place with Hingham. Tom Donovan had 2 goals in that victory against Whitman Hanson. And the Silver Lake girls lost 2-0 to Whitman Hanson, but the storyline there, the Whitman Hanson girls are undefeated after 11 starts, 10 wins and 1 tie. And the Duxbury girls had a 3-0 victory this week against Hanover. Their record now 9-1-1 on the season. Well, down at Plymouth South, I had an opportunity to spend some time with Constantine Regas. It took me a couple of takes to get it in the can, but Constantine and I had this conversation because his Mite program is enjoying great success with the Jaguars following a nice victory last week.
Performance. They had a very, very good win against East Bridgewater this week. It was a great win.
All right, let's talk about it. That's now, what, a 4-1 record for you guys?
Yeah, 4-1 record, hopefully headed to the playoffs.
All right, let's talk about it. This is your first year as a head coach. How has this been different? You've been connected with the program, but now being the head honcho, so to speak, and you get all the text messages, the phone calls, and the emails.
Yeah, you have to deal with a lot of background political stuff you have to deal with, making sure all the kids are there on time and things like that. It's not just showing up and helping the head coach anymore. Everything falls on your shoulders. But it's fun. It's a good experience. I like it.
Well, how much fun is it having your own son, right, an integral part of that program as the quarterback? Nick, right? That's his name?
Nico, yes.
Nico, yeah.
He's been there this is his 3rd year now. So it helps a lot. It's good to have somebody who knows the plays already. He's been involved in the program. So you're not trying to teach that position, which is such a very important position for the whole offense to take off with.
So how much is football in the Regas home? Okay, tell the truth now. Is it just after the Mite game and then maybe some Patriots, or is it before you take that bite of supper you say, one more thing?
No, it's Mites and just a little bit on the Patriots, and that's it. We got to be well-rounded.
Yeah, there you go. All right, let's look back to this past weekend. Sure. I'll show the people some highlights in a few moments. Not a lot of highlights, but at least some action. Talk about that game. You racked up over 20 points.
Yeah, we had a great start. We drove the ball right down the field on East Bridgewater. Nico scored our first touchdown, extra point conversion by Hunter Dean. Made the score 8-0. Went right back down the field again on them, stopped them, went right back down the field again, and Nico again scored our second touchdown. Halftime was 16-0, and we went right into I believe it was the 4th quarter, or late 3rd, early 4th quarter. Dean Gadagno scored our 3rd touchdown with another extra point. So it was a good game.
All right, how about for you? How important is it to...
All right, Constantine Regas and his team chalked up another victory this past weekend against visiting East Bridgewater, and that closed out the regular season, at least for home games. All right, if they continue on the path they're going, they could have a home game in the upcoming playoffs. Well, we have an opportunity to show you a little bit of those Mighty Mites as they went up against East Bridgewater. Let's call on our guys to roll the videotape.
Come on, line! Fire off! Hey, Swallow, Kim! Right there! Out!
All right, once again, the Jaguars will be back in action. They go down the Cape this coming weekend to take on Dennis Yarmouth for the second time on the schedule. How about bumping up to the high school front? Talk about Plymouth South varsity team. Their record now 2-3 on the season, following a 31-13 victory against Falmouth last week. Here's some interesting numbers: 95 points for, 82 against through 5 football games. Last weekend, Dylan Oxen had 4 touchdowns for South on runs of 1, 5, 18, and 75 yards. Another touchdown for quarterback Jason Lamb. He had a 1-yard touchdown run. South will be back in action this coming weekend when they take on Sandwich down on the Cape. The Plymouth North Eagles scored 34 points last weekend, but it wasn't enough, losing in a game against Dennis Yarmouth. Final count was 49-34. This game was 16-13. The Eagles trailed after 1 quarter, but unfortunately, Dennis Yarmouth erupted for 26 points in the second quarter. Sophomore quarterback Colin Cosgrove had 3 touchdown passes. They all went to Alex Potter. Plymouth North will be back in action this weekend. They got a long ride down the Cape when they take on Nauset. How about the Duxbury varsity football team? Another impressive win last weekend. Duxbury knocks off Xaverian. Final count there was 20-16. Duxbury currently rated number 4 by ESPN Boston in the MIAA high school football poll. John Hurwitz, the terrific senior, had 2 more touchdowns. He's got 11 on the season. But as much as Duxbury's offense put up the numbers, it was the defense that was called upon time after time after time in the fourth quarter to make some crucial stops and preserve that victory at home. A huge win for Duxbury, which, by the way, is now the proud owner of 31 straight high school football games, the longest win streak in Massachusetts for high school football. Well, we're just about out of time. We'd like to thank you for yours and invite you back with us once again next week for another edition of the Video Sports Page. Don't forget, coming up on Sunday at 7:30, we've got Flashback, and our regular program will replay again Sunday night at 10 o'clock. For Matt Willett and Rich Goulart, I'm your host, Carl Pratt. Health and wisdom from the Video Sports Page.